Welcome back. This will be the last session for today's event. The speakers are Naresh Dugal and Chris Curry from County of Santa Clara's Office of Sustainability and Evan Sims from Planet Geo. Naresh leads the county's Santa Clara County's Integrated Pest Management and the Pesticide Use Reduction Program. He provides programmatic approach on nature-based solutions to the county's sustainability and the climate change impacts mitigation and adaptation endeavors. Chris has worked for more than 5 years as an analyst in the County of Santa Clara's Office of Sustainability, managing natural resources projects in areas such as integrated pest management, sustainable landscaping, water conservation, and urban forestry. Since joining the county, Chris has been interested in GIS data collection and analysis to improve project deliverables and results. Evan Sims is the Vice President of the sales at Planet Geo and certified arborist who has worked in the green infrastructure industry for 20 years. With that, I would like to hand it over to Chris, Naresh, and Evan.
Thank you, Yoko. And thank you for this GIS day. It's been absolutely fascinating for me to watch the other presentations. Let's talk a little bit about the business applications of GIS in integrated pest and forest management. And we'll start with the use cases for GIS tools in the county. First, in integrated pest management. Pest management is critical to many of the county's regulatory, maintenance, environmental protection, and human health responsibilities and functions. Failure to most effectively manage pests such as insects, weeds, animals, and microbes can and ultimately will lead to the expenditure of thousands of hours in labor and millions of dollars. Very important stuff. We don't think about it, but pest management is critical. The decision-making and planning necessary to maximize the effectiveness of county pest management can be realized through access to accurate and timely data that is archived and analyzed through a GIS-enabled data management tool. We need to know what's going on, and we need to get the data, analyze it, and know what's going on. So, in progress county IPM GIS projects. We are currently working with GIS software company Planet Geo, and we'll find out more about Planet Geo from Evan in a little bit, to configure their tree plotter product as an off-the-shelf SaaS solution to facilitate that collection, storage, analysis of county IPM data that we were just talking about. Moving into urban forestry management. Complete and effective management of county trees requires knowledge of their condition, their attributes, and their location. A combination of both up-to-date large-scale canopy analysis and individual tree inventories are required to effectively understand and manage different trees in their environments. Again, we have to know what's going on, and we have to have a way to visualize and analyze that data. In order to ensure effective and equitable county tree planting efforts, a comprehensive analysis of many factors such as current tree canopy coverage, air quality, underserved populations, vulnerable populations, health issues, and other geographic and demographic data is also needed. And effectively sharing maps, data, and stories will help the county to provide essential information, interact with residents, and also can help increase support for urban forests. Taking a look at some of the in-progress county urban forestry GIS projects. To utilize Tree Plotter, again, as an off-the-shelf SaaS solution to store and analyze county and regional urban tree data and to prioritize planting areas. To use LiDAR and imagery to identify, map, and analyze plantable space throughout the urban areas of the entire county. To conduct an on-the-ground empty planting space inventory to locate, map, and analyze 6,000 spaces in the highest planting priority census tracts, and to develop an Esri story map that will help engage and educate stakeholders and the public. And with that, I'd like to turn over to Evan, and he can tell us a little bit more specifically about the tools that we'll use in these projects.
Cool. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, I'll just say honored to be here. This is fun as a GIS and tree nerd to be a part of this GIS day. So I'm, like Chris said, I'm going to be going into a little bit more specifics about how we are doing the things and helping the county and other customers execute the objectives that kind of Chris laid out here. So our company, Planet Geo, just for a little bit of context, we are really where the intersection of GIS and green infrastructure meet. So all of our tools, software, and our consulting services really have a foundation in GIS data analysis, and that all rolls up and informs our methodologies. So what you're looking at on screen is just our software suite. Tree Plotter Inventory we'll be talking a little bit about. That's our flagship product. Tree Plotter Canopy also be touching on. What I won't be talking about in this presentation is Tree Plotter Jobs. That's a tree care specific product, so the tree companies that are mapping and caring for trees. And then Tree Plotter Parks, won't be talking about that, but that represents where we started in urban forestry. We've now expanded into more of a green infrastructure. So our customers continue to ask, okay, we love what you're doing with trees. Can we also do similar things with, turf, shrubs, planter beds, and in this context, IPM? How can we also expand into integrated pest management? So focusing on inventory and canopy, we also provide other consulting services in that space as well. Okay, so we'll start with our top-down approach, what Chris was referring to as the tree canopy. So what this is we look at as a percentage of the total land area. We use remote sensing to classify what compromises this land cover. So we look at the way we do this is we have an exclusive partner, Earth Define, a company that has developed a methodology using AI to take the NAPE imagery, the National Agricultural Program imagery that's flown every 2 years approximately across the country in various states. And that is then processed to create raster data for land cover classification. So out of that area, what is covered by tree canopy, shrubs, grass, soil, water, impervious. And for most of this context, we'll be focusing on the tree canopy part of that classification. So this is visualized in just a screenshot of our tool, Tree Plotter Canopy. So you can visualize this raster data. Here, all the red blobs are actually, this is a 2011 raster data set. It's sitting on top of a current imagery, so probably from 2022 or maybe 2021. So what we're seeing right now is red blobs of trees that essentially, these were trees that were there in 2011. But we can see things here that, I'm setting up the context for kind of what the data is, and then we'll go back out and look how we analyze this data. But this is really what it looks like. So we can see things like, okay, if we really zoom in, where are we losing canopy? Where are we gaining canopy? How has that changed over time? So we're looking at the red blobs of trees that were there in 2011. And most notably, you can see that on the right side, there are red blobs that are over parking lots and where trees do not currently exist. So then we take a second data set. This is from, in this case, 2020. So about a 9-year change. And now we're looking at the green blobs are the tree canopy that is currently there. So we see a couple things. We see red blobs that don't have green blobs next to them or surrounding them. That means those trees have been removed or are no longer there. We also see kind of in the middle along Kennedy Avenue, a red blob in the middle and then an expanded green blob around that. So that means that that is tree growth. So that tree and that relative canopy area has increased. What we see on the right here is, why did we lose all this canopy? Well, this is a newly installed campus. And so we see a lot of trees were removed as part of that campus installation, somewhere between that 2011 and 2020 time period. But we also see new green blobs on that campus. So that's represented by the new trees that were planted. So that's kind of foundationally the raster data of, if you really zoom in and you want to visualize what is really going on at a fine scale, this is what it looks like. So really what we do is on large scale projects, that's really difficult to visualize on a large scale, something like Santa Clara County, all that zoomed in area. So we zoom out a bit and we take the raw raster data and we create derived vector data that is basically summary data. And we typically use certain geographies to summarize that data. So what we're looking at here now is a census block group level. So all these boundaries are the census block groups. And we're color coding that by the relative tree canopy cover to, again, the relative area. So how much of, as a percentage of that census block group is covered by tree canopy. So we see color coded, darker green areas have more denser canopy coverage, lighter areas have lesser canopy coverage. One of the challenges here is that tree inventories are popular and they're very useful in collecting information about the trees that, say, the county or a city owns and maintains. But the vast majority of trees are actually on private property, which makes it really difficult. For example, not everybody's going to let our arborist in the backyard to assess their tree. So we need a remote sensing solution here, is why we look at this kind of top-down approach to really understand the total urban forest across private and public land. So we're looking at this, we can see kind of where there is trees, where there is not trees relatively to the area. We can answer questions like, where should we plant new trees, as Chris alluded to? Where are we losing trees and what do we need to focus on? So if we start to use some of these filters, we can see, okay, let's look at the overall average canopy for Santa Clara County is 18%. What areas are less than that average? So we can filter and say, okay, here are the census block groups that are under the average 18% that we want to focus on. So then we can further prioritize that. So that's still very large areas. But again, ultimately, we want to get down to where should we plant trees? Where should we protect trees specifically? And all the way down to the ground level. Where can we actually put a real, because eventually, someone has to go to a site and put a tree in the ground. So we further prioritize this by using other socioeconomic and demographic and environmental data sets, so GIS data sets that we bring into our tool. And in our SaaS tool, we do this as a service, but we also provide the SaaS product that will enable our customers to actually run these scenarios and analyze the data for themselves. So in this scenario, I further prioritize those areas with underserved populations, vulnerable populations that also have low tree canopy. So this is where we can start to narrow down, where do we plant trees that really matter? Access to green space is an incredible benefit towards physical, mental health, security issues, all kinds of things. There are all kinds of values and benefits that trees provide and green infrastructure provide. I could do a whole presentation on that, but I'm not. And we really want to plant trees where it matters. Then once we find the priorities of these areas, we also model how many trees will it take, modeling out the growth of those trees. How many trees do we need to plant in these specific geographies and overall? And then what's the benefit? What's the net gain benefit of that? So our tool integrates with a program called iTree. This is a US Forest funded service that quantifies the annual monetary and ecosystem benefits that trees provide. So this is really the ROI, if you will, the return on investment of planting trees. And so we're integrating with that to return values to say, okay, once we run this scenario, you can see we need to plant over 100,000 trees total in all of these areas. And we break these down by the various geographies as well. So summarize, down to the individual geographic, the individual census block, how many trees need to go in each census block. And then we quantify the benefits. So currently $30 million in annual monetary benefit provided by the trees that exist in this area, the modeled, and then the net of an additional $2 million every year in monetary benefit by planting these trees in these areas. now I get into the bottom-up approach. So now this is using tree plotter inventory. These are specific points that we are actually ground truthing on the ground. Our arborists are coming out and mapping these. So you'll notice there's a similar pattern here to what I showed earlier about where we identified, to send our arborists out. So we can't walk all of Santa Clara County, or I guess we can, but that would take too long. So we really want to prioritize and say, 6,000 planting sites. We know we can plant 6,000 trees, this year or in short term. So how are we going to prioritize where we walk and identify suitable sites? Because again, someone actually needs to go put these trees in the ground. So this is what we're looking at here. These are mapped sites. So the green dots are part of the existing inventory on the county level. There's about 20,000 trees in that existing inventory. And then we're color coding by what we call status. So the actual planting sites that we've gone down in ground truth with boots on the ground represent the red and yellow and orange dots. So you can see there's a similar pattern to where we've actually mapped trees. And this is just a little bit more zoomed in level of what we're doing. So our arborist walks up to the site, positions collects the spatial attribute, either by GPS or visually mapping it on the imagery, and then collecting attribute data. In this case, can a large tree go in this space? Can a medium tree, small tree, other things? Is there irrigation available? Other things that would benefit the analysis, and then eventually, deployment and scheduling of crews to go out and plant specific trees. So that's a really kind of a 30,000 foot all the way down to the ground level of how we, help our customers prioritize and put actual trees in the ground throughout that spectrum. Just a little bit more about tree plotter inventory. So this is a park in Santa Clara County. GIS is great at other visualizing things. So our tree plotter tool, once you get those trees in the ground, now our tool is used to manage, analyze, and further planning for various aspects. So what I'm showing here, color-coded map, again, these are trees. All these points represent trees in the park. It's color-coded by condition. So interestingly enough, sometimes we can see things that we can't see in a list of trees and conditions in GIS. If we see a grouping of red dots, for example, in a certain area of the park, that may tell us that something is going on with the soil or vandalism or something like that, that's not really related to tree health, but it's more of a site condition that we wouldn't normally have seen in just a list of trees or a summary of conditions, for example. So visualization of that is really important. Then we do other things like analyze out of the box charts that help analyze things like species diversity. So just like your financial portfolio, you want good diversity to mitigate any kind of risk. So you have a lot of different kinds of investments. Tree species are the same thing. Often pests will attack a very specific species of tree. So for example, the emerald ash borer devastated trees in the Midwest. It's going east, it's going west, it will be out here eventually. But that pest only feeds on and destroys ash trees. So if 50% of your total tree population is ash trees, then half of your trees are at risk of being destroyed, and or this will be very expensive to mitigate. So you want to ensure you have good tree diversity and species level. And this is just one example of how our tools help our customers analyze things like that. Okay, I'll move into the integrated pest management solution. This is currently what we're building out for the county. So I don't have a ton exactly to show because it's all under construction behind the scenes, but wanted to give some basic premise and go a little bit deeper, and then Marish will expand on this too. But currently, the tracking of these projects of pest treatment, so spraying weeds on the ground, or tilling, or other means of mitigating these pests that Chris talked about in the beginning, done by a PDF form. And those, we know PDF forms are cumbersome. They're not exactly tied in or tracked very well, especially when you're handing them off person to person. So there was a desire to have a bit more organization with this form. Also, a spatial description is lacking. So you can describe this in words where the treatment is, but obviously we know GIS picture is worth 1,000 words. Where is that? Where is that treatment area? And really importantly, how has that changed over time? Because that visualization of how that's changed over time will inform whether or not our strategy, our mitigation strategy is working or not. So just to kind of demonstrate that, here we have a treatment area here. This is an entire park. We have a weed called bull thistle that we've identified. So treating the entire area. Ideally, what you'd like to see is year over year, this treatment area decreasing. That means we know that our treatment methodology is effective. It's shrinking, it's decreasing in activity level. Hey, that's working. If that's going in the opposite direction, we may want to consider changing course. Maybe we don't have the right chemical or even the right means, or maybe we need to integrate another method. So we treat chemically, but we also do things like plant other plants that will compete with that weed, or we go out and we pull those weeds, other means that can help control. So this visualization can really cue on, hey, is this effective? Is this not? What's going on here? It also helps, our tool will help with tracking. So where are all these projects located? If we have a project that are assigned to certain people, hey, Naresh has a project at the top here. There's a new project, it's right across the street. I should just assign that to him since he's already working on a project right there. So creating that kind of scheduling and efficiency and assignment efficiency is gained by, again, visualizing this. You may not see this in an address. You may not realize how close those addresses are to each other, but visualizing these projects in a map is really beneficial. And then I'm running a little short on time, so I'll scoot here, but this is my last slide. Reports, we've got lots of great reports. And again, this helps analyze and summarize what's effective, what's not effective, and ultimately helps with future planning and decision-making. So that is the end of my portion. I'm going to hand it now off to Naresh, and he's going to go into a little bit more detail about IPM and other projects.
Thank you, Yoko, for giving us the opportunity to discuss the county's integrated pest management program and applications of geospatial and spatially enabled data and how it's going to help our county in the future for this particular program. For the audience, are you able to see me? Okay. Well, for the audience here, just would like to give you the scale of this project or the program. We deal with over 605 plus facilities, and that represents hundreds and hundreds of acres of landscape, then 640 miles of roads, over 500 acres in 2 regional airports, and 52,000 acres in 29 regional parks, and many, many other areas within the facilities. Many of the speakers before me here, they have given the details of exactly how it is so important to see geospatially enabled data. It is in the real time. It can be viewed anytime by anywhere, from anywhere. And the virtual access to the observations helps users like me to make decisions before it really becomes a crisis. Some of the projects which we are hoping to apply this data, what Chris and Evans have just provided here, and the technology. The first and foremost is the 600 plus facilities. This represents hospitals, correctional facilities, office complexes, and many, many other infrastructures. This is where it is so important for us to know the sanitation, the housekeeping, and the maintenance of those facilities, because these are the conditions which are conducive to issues related to pests. A timely approach correcting the sanitation, housekeeping, and maintenance can alleviate many of the pest problems, which ultimately end up into applying chemicals. And our focus is to minimize the use of chemicals while still providing a pest-free environment. Other part of this technology that is very helpful to us now, that we can track a single cockroach once it's treated over 100 acres of a campus and see exactly how it's going to solve the problem. So it's kind of a treatment that is taken into a lat and long study from one point of campus to the other point of the campus. By single applications, we can eradicate the serious pest problem. Another example of another project within the IPM program is tree healthcare. Evan has just given one example of emerald ash borer. There are many biotic and abiotic factors influence trees and trees' health. Knowing those exactly at the geospatial level, where we are in the clusters, are we dealing with the monocultures? Do we have a problem that is spreading like a fire? All that can be enabled by having this geospatially enabled data available to us. Another example is the time-lapse studies. Knowing what we had in 2019 in this case, what happened in the 2021, and then 2022. In this case, we applied chemicals over time. We wanted to know exactly whether those chemicals were effective, for how long, how many seasons. Did we make the difference there or not? Do we have to just go reapply, or do we have to just find some other methods of control? This technology basically will help us also to mitigate areas which are very critical to wildfire management, especially the mountain roads, where we have to maintain at least 4 to 8 foot of buffers around the roads. Another critical example here is to know exactly when you're dealing with some life-threatening pest situations like blue-green algae, beehives, yellow jackets. Timely information on these in the real time can really help to sometimes even save a life. Another example is the forest management. We recently acquired some close to 400 plus donated trees. And we wanted to know exactly where to plant those trees so that we can make the difference, have some kind of urban heat island impact mitigation. In this case, this is the Santa Teresa Park, where today's planted trees probably will yield results in next 40, 50 years. And it's beyond our lifetime, up to 250 years. Having this kind of a data archived and made available to the future generations is very important. And the technology which we all have discussed today here is going to help us in that direction. This is another example of a time-lapse story. This is a Penitentia Creek Park. This is how it was before we planted more trees there, close to 150 more trees. Now the time-lapse study is there, as Evan mentioned here, canopy level study. How the canopy is going to look like today, what that hypothetical model is going to look 40 years down the road, and what benefits we can derive from our current methods, current efforts. Also, engaging the citizens, engaging the residents, over 2 million residents of the Santa Clara County, close to 700,000 households. How can we engage them virtually? GIS does make the sense. The data-enabled systems, geospatially data-enabled systems does make the sense. With that, I would close. Back to Yoko.
Great. Thank you, Naresh, Chris, and Evan.